let's get into this.
That wasn't it?
No.
That was just small talk?
Yeah.
Jesus, your
well,
small
they're setting
talk.
up stuff, yeah.
Oh, I'm sweating from your small talk. What's the actual interview going to be like?
Well, let's get into it.
Oh,
I'm joined right now.
Oh, okay.
By, is it Matt Marino? Is that how you say it?
Oh, boy, Matthew Manarino.
Matthew Manarino.
Do I look at you or do I look here?
You look here is fine.
Okay, here.
Just ignore them. They will not. They'll just comment later on weeks from now. So what is it that you do at Riot?
I am a creative lead at Riot Games on the publishing team.
And how long have you been here?
I've been here for 5 years. Actually, my 5th anniversary was last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we film this in late January for people who, because this might come out later.
Oh, for the future. Okay, it's January right now of 2019.
Yes, I don't need you to elaborate that. I'm establishing that for the viewer.
But if anyone's watching this and it is 2030, it's 2019 right now.
If they're watching this in 2030,
look at how much the world has changed.
The longevity of this series is far surpassing what I initially expected it to be.
And look at it's not a wasteland. It's not a hellscape. There's not fire and brimstone in the sky.
Let's go a little bit more contemporary.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So again, brand manager, was that what you said?
No, associate creative lead.
Associate creative lead.
Okay. An ACD.
You move so quickly, it's hard to keep up.
So it's like the equivalent I always use is that in a creative agency they have associate creative directors and creative directors.
Yeah.
We are effectively those. We don't call it director because that kind of title has some weird stigma, and so we call them leads. So we have associate creative leads and creative leads in publishing.
All right. So what, maybe you can break down what that means, because for like a lot of people who are watching this, they might not understand like what the agency model is or what, like associate creative lead just sounds pretty generic, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah, it in kind of a lot of ways is generic. So when we think about publishing campaigns, I'll use the team that I worked on. We worked on Odyssey, like the Odyssey launch, for example. So as a creative lead for Odyssey, you're effectively creating the story we want to tell through the publishing campaign. We're telling what the tone of that story is going to be. We're also helping develop the look, the feel, and a lot of the assets themselves. The maybe more tangible way to put it is if a bleach company is trying to sell you a bleach thing, right? They're just going to give you the product and then you have to sell why it's cool or sexy. I think for the event, for us, for publishing, we have to sell what that story is. We get skins and we get all of the cool stuff and background from our product teams. As a publishing team, we have to kind of create an interesting way and then present to players that they find really interesting or fascinating or highlights our products in like the best spotlight and tells ideally like an emotional story about it that people can connect to.
So you are not necessarily like, where does Odyssey get born from in relation to you? Is it your team that is like, let's do some sort of interesting sci-fi Odyssey look and feel for this? Or is this the product team that comes with it and then they present it to you and then you have to run with it? Like, where does that all fall out?
It's likely the second case that you mentioned. Most of the time a product team will have like an idea or a brainstorm about, hey, we'd love to do a sci-fi skin line. We'd love to make it a lot more fun. We'd love to kind of draw a lot of inspirations from the space opera genre. And then they'll develop in concept skins and then they will kind of be like, hey, here's what the skins look like. Here's some backstory for some of their like alternate fantasy lore. Here's all that information. Now make a thing that kind of encompasses the best parts of that or takes the most interesting emotional resonance of that and then presents it to players. So in the example of Odyssey, we got this package of skins and we knew what the tone and the feeling was, so we created kind of this marquee piece with Blur Studios that kind of captured the fun and lightness and the idea that you had this crew of people on the ship, and the idea is the players that you should be welcomed aboard that ship, right? You should have a family or a home on that ship.
You're talking specifically, people don't know Blur Studios, you're talking about the animated video that came out along with that, where is it Jinx that's like
it's Jinx, narrating
the whole thing? And, okay.
So basically product team will work together with them to create kind of an idea. Usually they won't just make a thing and then hand it to us, right? And go, make a thing out of this. Usually we'll kind of say, we'll have brainstorms together. We'll go, this is kind of an interesting thing. We can make an interesting CG out of this. We can make interesting publishing assets out of this kind of stuff. So we kind of work together. It's a big collaborative soup as opposed to they just hand us stuff in a traditional agency model. Kind of happens, right? Your product will just give an agency a thing and go, please find the cool stuff about this and then give it to people. For us, we kind of work in tandem, so we're able to understand the heart and core of that thing a little better.
And so for people that are watching this and don't understand the agency thing, maybe an example, you use the Bleach example, but maybe a similar example would be like a movie's coming out.
Yeah.
and people at this agency are now going to handle basically the marketing campaign for this, and what do the billboards look like and the trailers and all the campaign that goes along with it. So you, does your team function more as like an internal agency for Riot on all the projects that you work on? Is that a good way to put it?
That's a tricky way to put it, but I would say at the most ideal state, that's ideally how we would want to work or how we should work. I think that's probably the most effective way for us to work. We do work with other agencies because we just don't have like the dev resources or the bandwidth to do everything that comes out in campaigns. A lot of examples, we use a ton of agencies to develop like our microsites or to develop in-client activations like the hubs and stuff. But when it comes to like ideation or to your idea, like if we are doing a movie, there needs to be like the posters and the billboards and the trailers. We're effectively creating all the ideation behind that. We do have internal artists, internal editors, and all that kind of stuff, but we sometimes have to outsource as well. So it's not all internal too.
So you've been here for 5 years. Has this been all 5 of your years here?
No, I started as a writer, just kind of a writer first. It was kind of catch-all writer. I worked on the Riot Games brand team, and so we used to kind of write articles about who Riot Games was, some kind of interesting innovations, what our Thunderdome projects were. We wrote kind of a lot of stuff like that. Writers at that time kind of did all writing, other than narrative. We just did copywriting, we did editorial writing, we did like even some gameplay writing. But we decided to split it into kind of editorial writing and copywriting, just to have that more specialized area of expertise. Like a copywriter can be a good editorial writer, but I don't think they can be great at both at the same time. And so we kind of trying to split them apart so you could have incredible brand writers, incredible copywriters, and then kind of build up those skills individually.
So, you know, forgive my ignorance, but this feels like a pretty big jump from going and writing about, hey, here's like a cool thing that's happening at Riot, to now being creative lead on this really big project that's going to roll out globally, and you're gathering video assets and all this kind of stuff for that. Is that a fair assessment? Was it a pretty big jump over the past 5 years?
It wasn't as massive as a jump as it might seem like. We have different levels of things. So I started as a copywriter, moved up to a senior copywriter who was managing other copywriters, and then over a couple of years kind of transitioned into this creative lead role. It took several years, and it kind of took a broadening of the scope of work that I did. So originally, to your point, like it started as just like a simple article, right? Like, hey, Star Guardian Lux is out, to bigger things, to let's make entire websites or quizzes, or overlooking the tone and copy for an entire campaign. And then it gets broader and broader, writing scripts for our animated marquees and that kind of stuff. So the scope of work broadened over time. It wasn't like just kind of this quick like flash jump.
What is your background before Riot?
Before Riot, there's like a long version, a short version. Which one would you like?
I think we've got time for the long version.
Okay, great.
Maybe did you go to college? Do you have like a typical?
No, I didn't. I went to a college, but it was kind of a, how do I say, fake college? I won't say which college it is because I just called it a fake college, but
right.
It was kind of a for-profit college, right? But I went specifically for technical animation, which was kind of rigging and some technical art. So rigging being the joints and musculature of...
I mean, it sounds like originally, as you followed that, you would have been literally like an animator at Riot, like building out champion.
A technical animator, yeah. So primarily focusing on rigging and weighting and that kind of stuff. I graduated and I did my first freelance job as a technical animator, and it was awful. I hated it. I had like no creative agency. It was just kind of really binary work. It was do this work. It paid pretty well, but I just didn't like it. I didn't have like particularly the mindset that made me crazy about the work. So I stopped doing that and got into more writing and started up kind of this site that talked about comics and some more interesting stuff, and was able to kind of transition into here. That's the truncated version. Yeah.
So you ran a site?
Yeah.
Okay.
I started a website that talked to specifically comic creators. For me, I had kind of was interested in writing, was interested in kind of fleshing out my creative writing skills. The big thing for comic writers and kind of creative writers, I couldn't find a lot of resources online that I found particularly useful. So I thought, why not just reach out to people myself? Started the site, started reaching out to people I really admired in the comic industry, and started interviewing about the craft, what they did, and how they did it. I ended up writing. I ended up writing a review about a comic that I thought was pretty bad. And the creator reached out to me directly on Twitter and was like, "You don't get it. You're irresponsible with your review. You're like destroying my craft." And I was pretty young at that time, and it kind of messed up my head. Like it kind of made me, it really threw me off. And so I ended up writing kind of just an op-ed piece, freelance, about and at the time I was probably like 21 or 22, and I thought this was just like such a cool, amazing, like I thought I was just a genius for this idea, but it was mainly an idea about what is our responsibility about writing reviews if the artist can contact you immediately, right? Like it's not like back in the 50s where like Clark Gable would punch you in a club or whatever, right? Like this is just the creator could just hit you up on Twitter and go, you suck, right? And so what is our responsibility in that as critics or whatever? And how do we respond to that? And do we have to respond to that? And I did an op-ed, and this guy was starting this kind of blog at the time, and he read it and then recruited me for his blog, and I started writing there, and it was kind of like a new media-ish social blog. It was like one of those. It was like 20 articles a day kind of thing.
Yeah, like a Mashable type.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And but you were running your own for.
Yeah.
Sorry. So before you went to you came to Riot, it sounds like you operated your own thing for several years, right?
Yeah. For $0.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As you were speaking about this, I am intimately familiar with digital media and the viability and financial rewards that come along with it. So it feels like for several years you were just kind of hanging out and trying to do stuff that you were passionate about rather than pursuing things that were very financially rewarding.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it was an immense time of turmoil, right? Like I was so horrified the whole time. Just one, you go to college and you pay all this money for a degree and then you don't really use it. There's so much wrapped in that stresses you out and gives you like immense amount of anxiety. In addition to that, I'm doing this thing that I really love, but I'm literally making no dollars at it. Like I'm eating top ramen every single meal, and I'm out of college now, and my contemporaries, my peers are all going on to get actual jobs because they went to like Wharton and like Princeton and like nice schools, right? And I went to like this fake college, so.
So were you, because you talked about comics, were you into games at this time? Like were you playing games during all this?
I played games pretty much probably my whole life. My path to games is kind of different. I was like a football player all through high school. It's kind of a jock. And so I played games, but I didn't share that with my friends, right? I felt really, because it wasn't like, everyone wanted to go out and party, but I want to play like Warcraft. Like I don't want to play like WoW all night. And so I ended up just kind of, I was playing football a ton, and then I saw there was like a punk group of kids in my school, and the punk kids could be whatever they wanted, right? Like, and that's kind of, I admired that so much. No one was judgmental. They're all just kind of punk and goth kids. And so I felt like I could free myself with that group, and so I quit football and I became like a punk kid in high school. My parents were not happy.
It's kind of interesting how much identity in high school plays into like the person that you're trying to become and who you're trying to become, and kind of the areas you get slotted into, because I think for a lot of people, hearing that you are the creative lead on all this stuff, that you ran like a comic book critique site and all this stuff, nobody would have expected that you were a jock in high school and on the football team. It's a unique situation.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I think the problem is that in high school I was good at sports, but the idea was that I wasn't being true to what I really loved. Right? I was hiding a massive part about myself, right? Like at my home, in my bedroom, I had like Dragon Ball Z posters and like all these crazy crazy wall scrolls and stuff of like Goku and whatever. And I was obsessed with that stuff, but I didn't share it with anyone. So it felt totally empty, right? Like it felt like I was living these two different lives. And so I decided, why not just hang out with this group that let me be who I was. Yeah.
So then you're working on the website. How does that transition over to Riot?
So I started working for like this, let's say Mashable light company. I won't say the name, but this Mashable light company. And to your point about the viability of digital media, the company was successful, but not successful. You have to be Mashable and barely. You have to be BuzzFeed to basically be successful.
It's all about scale.
It's crazy. You have to have a massive amount of scale. So the company that got started didn't have that amount of scale and ended up getting shut down. But a competitor site picked me up as to be the West Coast editor. It was kind of a phony title because there was one person on the West Coast and it was me, but I got to just be like the West Coast editor. It was actually kind of interesting. I got to practice a lot of writing because, again, it is blog style content. So I was writing 15 articles or 10 articles a day. So I kind of got my craft up through that, which is really nice. It was work from home because the company was based in the East Coast, and I kind of had a little bit of downtime. So I would play games a lot. I started playing League of Legends, and I was like, this is this is not because I work here, but it was like the best game I've ever played in my life at that time. It was free. I was a Varus one trick, and I became obsessed with it. And I thought, I'll just on a whim see if they're hiring. And I actually hired just through the general inquiry thing. One of the writers, who you know, Connor, reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to take a test? Do you want to go through the whole interview process? Then I ended up working here like 5 years ago.
How did you know Connor?
He just reached out to me. He was just looking through applications, I guess.
Oh, I see. So you had applied.
I had applied just straight cold application on the website, like that 99.9% of not getting looked at. Like for some reason they just looked at it. I don't know. I think my cover letter was like, I wrote it like a crazy person just trying to get attention or whatever.
Well, it seems like it worked.
I guess it worked, yeah. So that was, yeah.
So this must have been an interesting experience for you landing here because you had worked probably, I assume, remotely in most of these jobs before.
Yeah.
And now you're suddenly at this company and a company that creates a game. What was the experience like joining into the company?
Without being hyperbolic, it was honestly kind of weirdly life-changing, right? Like I went from making a minimal amount of money each year to you know, rice and top ramen in a tiny 500 square foot apartment to being able to support myself, right? And in this kind of lavish place with all these great amenities, but those are all kind of nice surface things. What was really interesting was not having to work alone anymore, right? Like was this idea of like having a collaborative and supportive group of people who I could go to and talk to someone and go, oh, you have 10 years of experience doing this, right? Like, and I can learn so much from this person who has 10 years of experience. So that was kind of a massive shift in the way I thought about myself professionally, but also the way I kind of collaborated and worked with other people. Because as you know, as a writer or as a journalist, you write a thing and your editor who you work with every single day, you guys start to like share the same brain, right? So you start to write things that your editor is gonna like. But when I came here, all of a sudden there were hundreds of people for me to talk to. So I could take stuff that I was doing, and even that applies today while we're making marquees or while we're making creative stuff, I can take it to any person here and they'll give me open and honest thoughts on it. It might piss me off sometimes, but it's better than not getting it, right?
You mentioned that you'd written for sites in the past that had maybe sometimes smaller viewership or smaller readership. I'm sure some of your pieces probably would blow up if you interviewed the right person or did a piece on the right person. Now, though, you work on stuff like the Odyssey video that gets seen by people all over the world. What has that experience been like for you?
It's a really good question because I don't think about it often, but it feels, I think the most, and this is just not me talking because it's an interview or whatever, it feels really, really, the reason I want to do anything, or the reason that I think any creative person wants to do anything, is to reach out and connect with other people, right? And to, if it for half a second make someone's life, make them smile or make them happier or make them think about the world differently, the fact that you can see that a ton of people are watching and commenting on it and feeling good about it, especially stuff like Odyssey, like people feel they love the character moments, they love when this person makes this joke or when this thing happens. To be able to just have that happen to one person is beautiful, right? To have that X times 4 million, 5 million is phenomenal. So it just feels good to be able to kind of connect with people in that way, especially when connecting with people is difficult sometimes, you know?
Is that your main motivation? Just like when you get excited about coming to work, is like that ability to create something for other people to feel good about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the best way to put it. I think what I really value here is that accolades and all that kind of stuff that gets wrapped into creative work, it's deprioritized here. For here, it's really about, and I keep trying to like back up and saying like, I don't want this to be like corporate me being like, this is what I was coached to say. This is genuinely how I feel, which is that if we can make people who put their heart and souls and money into this game, if we can kind of give them something beautiful for like 2 minutes, that's worth it, right? We owe them that. We owe them that respect because they give everything to us, right? And they give everything to this game, so we have to give everything. We have to give our hearts to them too. And that's the most beautiful thing we can do, right? It's the same thing of anyone who makes a film or anyone who makes a TV show or writes a book or a comic, right? That's the consumer, the person who's consuming it is pouring themselves into it, so you have to pour yourself into it too.
There are probably times where you've worked on things that people get very upset about. The League community, I know personally, is very vocal, and whenever they're upset about something or they don't like, what is that experience like for you?
I can give you an actual example.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can I give an actual example? Is that okay? Okay, we worked on Draven Day. My team worked specifically on Draven. I don't know if you remember Draven Day.
I do remember it, yeah.
But Draven Day was like notoriously hated for some
Was that
reason.
an April Fool's?
Yes, yeah. People hated Draven Day. I don't remember exactly why at the time. I think it was like too much Draven, right? We were like, we're gonna lean really hard on this joke that Draven's kind of a prick and that he kind of is like all egotistical, and we leaned really, really heavily into it. And I think it kind of rubbed people the wrong way because it was like too much. It hurts, right? It's painful, right? It's tough because you, at the same point, you're pouring your heart and soul into it, and people reject it. It's hard to deal with, but at the same time, it's an immense learning experience, right? Like if something's gonna hurt you that profoundly or hit you that hard, you're gonna have to learn from it. Whether you subconsciously or consciously acknowledge that, you have to learn from that. So everything that hurts is kind of just like a learning lesson. I think people don't grow if they kind of just turtle up and go like, oh, well, it's that person's fault, or I wasn't doing this. Like, you just have to accept that.
One of the interesting things to me about your story is I talked to, and I've certainly felt this way at certain points in my life, I think people, especially in their 20s, but I think it echoes out before and even after, oftentimes feel as though it's like, why am I doing this, or am I going to find success, or whatever. You went to college, you got the degree and the thing that you expected, then it didn't end up working out the way you wanted it to. Then you were trying to figure out how you're going to make things work, and now you're here, probably in a much happier state, perhaps, than you were before, certainly in a better financial state. You know, what would you say to people who find themselves in that similar situation right now, who are in college and they don't know what they want to do, or they're coming out of college and they've not found the job that they expected was waiting for them on the other side of it?
I think that's a really, really good question. I can't speak because everyone's experience is going to be vastly different than mine. Without going too deep into it, I was phenomenally lucky in this situation, right? Like, again, for Connor to look at my stuff and for my resume to be exactly what they needed exactly at the time, for me to get into the company and for everything to kind of be the way it is, it's just phenomenal luck, right? Like in like a previous life, I was probably like a caterpillar that saved a village or something, right? Like, I just got phenomenally lucky in that case, right? So I don't have tips for like success or how to do it right, because I don't think I did it right. I think I got extraordinarily lucky and have worked pretty hard at that. Once I got the opportunity, I've worked really hard as in the company. But I think for people who are in college or people who are trying to figure stuff out, I think the reality of the situation is that it becomes a balance of following the thing that you truly love and then finding this kind of need to adhere to this financial restraints, right? Because a lot of the time I find like people don't chase the thing that they love to do, or the thing they're often passionate about, because it's not the thing that is immediately financially viable, right? But I think the people that I admire the most, and the people who have been the most successful in this world, whether it's like Michelin star chefs or comic creators I really love or directors I really love, each one of those people started at the very bottom, right? And then they worked super, no one ever jumped into a role and all of a sudden they were a Michelin star chef, or all of a sudden they were a director. Every single person started making $0 and working 14-hour nights and days and getting their ass kicked all the time, right? And that is the common thread. So if you love it and you work hard at it, I'm not saying that it's instantly always going to result in success, but at least you are working towards something and loving everything that you do, you know? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think
so.
Seems stupid and like motivational coach but that's probably the best. That's at least how I could quantify it.
Well, but I think it makes sense. I mean, part of the reason I bring it up is just because I feel like the world kind of tells you that if you just go to college, you'll just find your thing, or there's an expectation that right out of college, like, that's the thing that you'll get, or even people have a job and it doesn't go as well. For you, it's an interesting thing where it took a couple years and then you found this thing that it seems like you've had a lot of success in and certainly found a lot of happiness in.
Yeah, there wasn't a clear path, not at all, not even close. It was having to kind of go back and forth and figure out what I loved doing and the best way that I could do it. And for me, it always found out with being able to tell stories, being able to connect with people, and being able to hopefully share a part of myself, share a part of what is beautiful about creativity, and then try to give that to other people. I'm really fortunate here that I happen to part of who I am massively is a person who plays games, and especially a League of Legends player. So everything I love about that, I'm able to help share with the community, and the community is able to share back with me and everyone here. That sounds like really like new agey, like I have like a crystal in my pocket or something, but it's yeah, I don't know how else to put it.
One of the other striking things to me about your situation is your role is really unique in that it is creative, but not necessarily at this point in time for you, at least directly creative. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel as though many young folks or many people who are creative, they might feel creative, but they maybe don't think of themselves as the best writers, or they can't do, art or drawing or whatever. You have found an ability to, and a role for yourself that is creative, that doesn't necessarily use like those hard art skills. Do you think, and that is unique to me because I feel like a lot of people might not know a role such as yours exists out here.
Yeah.
That there's something that somebody can do that's like this.
I think the slight distinction on that is that every creative person, especially here and in other game companies and in the agency world, come from a hard skill background. So for me, mine's writing. Our other creative leads here, we have people who are insane artists who moved on to be creative leads, editors, directors. They all have hard skills, but what that does is all kind of help amplify the actual creative direction work. It helps us kind of see things from a different lens, and also helps us kind of look at each other. If I need editing advice or if I need art advice, I can go to that creative lead and kind of say, hey, you're an expert at that. You've done this in your past. What do you think from that perspective? So it kind of helps us amplify those things. But it is not as binary as like, I'm an illustrator, or I'm a narrative writer, I'm a comic book writer. It kind of sits at a level that incorporates a lot of those things into a campaign, but doesn't necessarily do those things themselves, right? Like I don't often write scripts anymore because we work with copywriters now. The copywriter will share a script with me and I'll say, does this align with our creative direction, our creative tone? Does this tell the story we want to tell, that kind of stuff?
Is there anything that you would say you have a unique perspective, you're inside the company, you've been here for quite some time, the players and the people that consume a lot of the different media that your team produces or works with, they have a limited perspective, right? Which is only what comes out. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you would say to those individuals, anything that they should know about Riot or your experiences here, or anything, that you would throw out there to them?
I think the big thing that I always try to think about is that everyone in here loves this game just as much as every single person who plays it, right? Like, I think for me, we often have to make choices or decisions that to players seem really difficult or they don't like. Even when we talk about our balancing teams, right? They have to nerf or buff or do whatever to certain champions. And a lot of that times that stuff might seem arbitrary, or that stuff might seem even malicious. But I think for a lot of the case, each one of us loves this deeply, and we're just trying to make what is truly beautiful to give to players and people who love this game in the community, right? And the value that our community gives us through feedback, and the value that our community gives us through their love of this game is immense, right? Like, it's so helpful because we know who we're making stuff for, and we know that if I can see a streamer who's streaming, I'll give you an example. I played a game the other day, and a guy, at the end of a game, people always like link their Twitch stream, like, check me out. And there was this dude in Ohio, and he was streaming to 14 people, and he would play guitar between breaks, and he was just streaming all day to 14 people, right? That's the most beautiful thing in the world, because he is just doing what he loves, and he's sharing what he loves. And he's able to do that, and League of Legends is ideally the conduit through that, right? And I think that we all try to capture that here, and we hopefully can give that back to people in the community.
In your time here, is there any project that in particular stands out, or anything that you worked on that you feel particularly proud of?
I love Odyssey. We did Odyssey. The whole thing, as we thought about Odyssey, was creating a feeling that no matter who you were, no matter where you were, you had a place in this world with these characters, right? Everything was about welcome aboard, come join the ship. Our marquee was about Jinx trying to recruit you onto the ship. We had a quiz where you could get a role on the ship. When you did the missions, it was about picking a crew member and playing as that crew member. We wanted to give players the idea of a smaller extension that no matter where they were, they had a family and a home in the Odyssey world, and hopefully that extends to no matter where you are, you have a family and home within the League of Legends community, right? Like there's nothing. It's the same point as like the streamer guy I'm talking about. Like it seemed like he was far away from his family, right? He was attending college, but like he had a home in League of Legends with the League of Legends community, right? Like that is something that is often difficult to find in the world, right? Which is somewhere you belong and somewhere your home, and it comes with so many ups and downs, right? Like the league community can often be pretty tough, right? But it's tough because we all share this familial bond, right? Where we all kind of have a home here, and it's the beauty of it is a million strong, right? I'm never going to be alone as long as the League of Legends community exists, because there'll always be one person in the world who I can go, oh, you play support Thresh, I play Jhin ADC, we are connected in this moment, right?
Maybe somebody's watching this and they're like, wow, it sounds really cool to be able to work on these creative projects at Riot, or maybe at other companies, or maybe even joining an agency someday. Would you have any advice for somebody who really wants to get into this type of work?
Creative work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say find the thing that you are particularly passionate about and commit yourself to that, right? A person I admire immensely is one of your friends, is Double Lift, because he found a thing he was passionate about, and he sacrificed everything to follow that, right? Like I love his story and I love everything about Double Lift because of that reason, right? Like, and you could see it paid dividends. It really is about taking this leap of faith of finding something you're really passionate and something you really adore, and then going really hard on it. And it might not be financially viable, right? For a very, very long time. Maybe that's okay and maybe that's not. That's for everyone to decide. But what is important is that you need to find the thing that you truly love to do, and then just do it, right? 10,000 hours and just keep on doing it. Learn as much as you can, study as much as you can, and then when you're comfortable, do something really sketchy that pushes you out of your comfort zone, right? I hope. It's the same thing. I admire a lot of people outside of our field who've done that too. You know, like chefs who've worked at the most famous restaurants in the world, the common thread for all of them is they leave that restaurant at some point to either start their own thing or to go work somewhere totally different, right? Because they need to be challenged, they need to be somewhere else. They need to be not as comfortable as they are.
Matthew, thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Thank you. Do we shake hands now?
Yeah, we can
Thank
shake
you
hands,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Is that it?
That's it.
Woo!
Hey, thanks so much for watching, Playmakers. Really appreciate you tuning in. Also appreciate Riot and all the guests that are coming on the show. I love being able to tell the stories of the people that are actually working at these companies and making things possible. And it wouldn't be possible, the series, without Alienware support. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to do a second season, but they came in, helped us out. There's a link in the description, dell.com/Travis. You can check out some of their products, and supporting them supports me, which supports the show. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.